Hey everybody, Shaman Hawk here for Shamanic Lodge. I'm going to talk a little bit today about sexual healing, shamanism and sexual healing. First off, we should say that sexuality is a huge part of life on this planet. Not just humanity, but life on this planet. Very sexual planet. I mean, just that's how life happens. In humanity, sexuality is a big part of humanity, and it has been for a long, long time. Only until the three big religions, the most dogmatic systems, came along that put everything that felt good in the part of evil, sin, and then therefore spanned the three biggest blockages I can think of in humanity is fear, guilt, and shame. And most of it's around sexuality. And because it's so important in humanity, people will always instinctively go towards that, but because of the fear, guilt, and shame part put in by the organized religions, people would still go to it if it had some kind of a system of spiritual pretense to it, spiritual purpose. Now it's okay, And so it became this escape of oppression, and this is where things can go wrong. This is where your spiritual scandals come up. This is where, we see it in the church all the time. These people are supposed to take these vows of celibacy and then play around with each other, with children, do all kinds of weird things, instead of just saying, humans are sexual and stop trying to fight it. And you probably wouldn't have all the weird stuff that you do with the organized religions and their authorities. But ancient religions celebrated sexuality throughout all their holidays and their ceremonies, because it was just a good thing for the planet and Earth and humanity and life in general. All that being said, because of the suppression of it, because of the fear, guilt, and shame, all kinds of other issues come up around it. And why wouldn't it? That life is prolific on this planet. Life really wants to keep happening. Evolution is awesome. It's just that, like I said, only about 2,000 years ago did all that change, and all become evil. For all the near million years of human evolution before that, everything was just fine. So it's pretty obvious that what came up was just an instrument, with the religions, an instrument of control, suppression, and just any other tool to manipulate humanity. All that. So then the sexual healing comes up in the shamanic work of trying to get people to be okay with themselves, number one, in general, and then being okay with themselves sexually. What's involved in the sexual healing? Well, that's a list too big to name here. Because sexuality is so integrated into humanity, and like I said, in all other forms of life on the planet, it can go through all the issues. I like to tell people when I describe personal, religious, and social programming, the day you're born, it starts snowing on you 10 millimeters, or maybe, let's say, a half an inch of programming every day. And it just keeps doing that. You're just absorbing all the things. You need to, how do I live on this planet? How do I do in life? And a lot of it comes down. So then we get into the part of good girls do this, and good boys do this, and bad kids do these things. Bad people do these things. And again, a lot of it revolved around sexuality. We start looking at children just exploring everything in life. And the other thing is they explore is their own sexuality. And then they explore the sexuality of their other children around them, be it siblings, be it cousins, being, neighborhood kids. And that's just what kids do. And then when they're doing that in their innocence, then they get punished for it because they're being bad. Well, they had no idea that was bad. They had no idea. They just knew that it felt good. And this is, again, where you get in trouble with, the predator type adults can take advantage of these situations. So how does the shaman work with this? Well, the same way we do with a lot of other problems. First, we listen. We listen to what the person is saying directly, and we listen to what they're saying indirectly. We read between the lines. And there's a fine line between assumption and actually getting the other parts of the information that they're not saying. And again, that takes training. So when you're looking at somebody to take you through what you believe you need is a sexual healing, or at least healing sexual issues, if you don't have the shaman who went through full training in these issues, and it's a very intricate category, then go see somebody that's a sex therapist. At least they have some kind of training behind them. And by the way, excuse me, alarm. So when I say training in this, I mean really in-depth training of also what goes on in the mind and so on. Some of the shamans that I worked with were psychologists and psychiatrists, and yes, there are those types of people in shamanism. And so a lot of the training that I got around this issue and others came from these types of people, and I pass on a lot of their teachings and when I'm training other apprentices or in my work in general. There's a lot of these tantra people, tantrikas and all that. That doesn't qualify as the person who should take you through that kind of a healing or that kind of work. And I've worked with these people. I've gone through some of the same training that they did, and it misses the mark, in my mind, in my opinion, by a great deal. What kind of results can come from that? The personal work that I've done with people, it can make great changes. It can make great changes in acceptance of themselves. I've seen people get off of psych drugs. I've seen people stop addictive and self-abusive habits, when they went through their healing process. There's a shaman that I took to an apprentice, Shaman Orshi. She has a YouTube channel, Shamanicwoman. It's kind of hard to find her because I keep telling her she should put more material up so she'd be easier to find. Shamanicwoman on Instagram. But there was somebody, a young man that she worked with, took him to a full therapy session, I call it that way. And within a couple hours, this young man went through a complete change from being very, very timid, from very, very shy, uncertain himself, just like really pushed down, oppressed, and after, the appointment, it was a completely different picture. You wouldn't recognize it. It looked like two completely different men. And the polaric value of that, remember now, the male energy is projective and the female is receptive. Well, in her case, understanding that polarity, she could pull out or allow him to project a lot of the insecurities into her, and then she transmutes that. Remember now that the female has this transmutive ability. It also has this nurture creative ability, as she can take one cell from a man and create an entire human being. She can take one energy signature and either create a reality or transmute an issue into a healing. So this is where the women can become a lot more powerful as shamans than men can in many ways, because of this creative and transformative energy they have within the female polarity. On the male issue, the man being projective and then the female being receptive. Now the rest of that cycle is as she's receiving internally, she's emitting outside of her body into the atmosphere between the two of them, the man and the woman. And that becomes that little bit of a world that comes back into the man and then back into the woman. And that's become that transmutive energy egg or energy cocoon that the two of them are in. And the male shaman can read that energy and transmute that and complete that cycle back into her. This type of a situation can cause immediate effects, positively and negatively. But again, that's why, and on the negative part, it can be just a lot of energy input, as if you're as if you have a high voltage into a circuit that can't handle it. And so then it becomes kind of an energy overload. That won't happen with the female working in the healing capacity, because she is that, she's regulating that power. I'm trying to think of how to say this in English. I'll think about it more. But it is in depth. The bottom line is, it is a real practice. It's a very real practice, and it's in high demand. Women are very good at it. It's much more accepted socially for women to be doing it, for a lot of historic reasons around scandals and so on. But there's a high place for it with men working in it as well. Again, excuse me. With Shaman Orshi, this was a specialty of hers. And everybody's got their own specialty in shamanism. Some people are great at hands-on healing. Some people are great at the readings, geomancy, alchemy, and so on. But the women in particular that society says is oversexed are the ones that are usually really good at this type of work, because they just have that polarity about pulling things in. People ask, well, what are the dangers of it, for a woman working in that? Well, a lot of things, a lot of obvious physical afflictions and so on. And again, the woman shouldn't start working in this kind of a capacity until she's really reached her core truth and really nurtured that and fortified that truth to where she can go into questionable environments, whether it's banishments or exorcisms or even intense energy situations, that could be existing in a sexual healing capacity. But then there's different things that she was working with people on the talking part, but then when we got to the sexual healing part, she could feel like effect on her body before she even started to work with someone in that capacity, and then said, no, we're not going to do it here, because this is where it's important to be really empathic. Because she could say, because of what I'm feeling on my body, we should not go into this activity or this other level, and then just call it off. And this is where women have to really trust their instincts on that. Men have to be even more careful with that because of the projective level of what you could put. You could get all the signs and hear all the things, and the woman just like, yeah, I'm ready, I'm open, I'm ready to do this. But the man has to really pay attention to a lot of the signs of the body language, the tone, the rhythm, and so on, because the projective energy sequence that follows into that at a deeper level can be that overload practice and be catastrophic. When I was in training for this, out of my late teens, early 20s, the women that I was working with were just awesome, in their 30s and 40s. And the information that was downloaded to me through that practice. And by the way, the same kind of energy transference can be used for teaching, and not just a healing, but a quick download of information. They were just downloading this information on me of how things could go wrong, because some of these women had a lot of things that went wrong with them when they were going through their practices, the alleged healings with the wrong type of men. And I got to experience what that feels like on the body through them. And again, well, that's another video of how that actually happens. But the point I wanted to make is that while, especially now, more men seem to be going through the need to be working with women to go through this sexual healing process, guys, you have to do it with a woman that's really trained with it, and you have to really be okay with investigative process. I mean, interrogate this woman before you get involved with in any capacity, because you have to also remember that because of the desire and intention is there, it starts to make a lot of the energetic equations manifest into reality. meaning that because you want to go to this woman and you want to work with her, you're opening yourself up to that. And if she's not really good at clearing energies from herself, from people that she's worked with, now you're going in and collecting all the other negativity that she's cleared from these other guys. And that can put you even a worse position. It's just, it becomes a real mess. Do I know of people who do same-sex sexual healings? No, I do not. And polarically, I've never even heard of instances where it does work. So maybe that's a new frontier other people want to explore. I'd be curious to hear about it. Even on the part of the sex magic, frontier, I haven't heard of it working. With the same-sex couples or groups working for manifestations, I just didn't. I'm sure with all this gender stuff, people can come up with some theories, but I'd like to hear the results of it and serious application and serious studies on it, meaning that you did this a few ways at a few times and with the same people, like you would any other kind of experiment. Recently I've talked to different women who thought they were called to do this. And when I kind of explained a lot of the work involved, then they were like, well, I could go get a certificate in this, a certificate. No, it doesn't work like that because you're working in theory. And when you're working in theory and then you're getting the information in theory, and then you want to use that information in application without experience, you are a disaster waiting to happen. And so, yes, in the training part, you're going through the actual sexual healing practices with people, and that's how you do that. If you're in medical school, you're getting the information from the books and the study courses, and then you're starting to cut open dead bodies and whatever in your lab exercises. Everything has some practical application system to it, so you get your hands-on knowledge. If you're not going to do that, where's your experience coming from? You see, it just for some reason in shamanism and the other metaphysical arts, people think you can just kind of like channel the information and just whiz through this stuff without any kind of hands-on training. It just doesn't work, people. It just doesn't work. Get over the issues, get over the programming, then get into the training for this stuff. If you're not willing to do the whole thing, if you're not willing to do the hands-on work or the deep personal work involved, don't do it at all. You're just going to end up taking people down the wrong road. Okay, all that being said, if you guys have any questions about this or comments, I can do other videos on it. I'm going to also say, people, if you have any kind of issues, you can always contact me, privately for shamaniclodge@gmail.com. Share the videos and so on. If you have issues that you need to work out around this arena, you go ahead. Like I said, I might know somebody in your area that I could direct you towards. And right now, I'll go ahead and leave it at that. I know it's a touchy subject a lot because, of all the issues going around it, because of all the scandals and stuff that have come up around it and so on. But that's just part of it. Unfortunately, that's just part of it. And I'll also say I really do wish there were more good shamans out there because there is just too much work. As an example, right, just kind of a side note away from the topic, I think any industrialized nation has 1/3 of the population clinically depressed. And they just know that number from the people who actually go make appointments with different types of therapists. 15%, well, actually 11 to 14% of industrialized nations' population is suicidal. And men do that first because they're actually women. I hear from psychology friends, they say women think about it more, but men do it more because they're just impulsive like that. And maybe I'm also hearing that those rates have gone up. So I wish there was more people wanting to go through shamanic apprenticeships. I wish people were serious about it. I wish people would, even shamanic practitioners. Okay, so there's something. You may have something in special, like the topic we're talking about today, and go through the training for that or any other topic and be the shamanic practitioner in that specific topic. And then after your work, you may decide to go ahead and do a full apprenticeship. I'd love to see people doing that because, like I said, the masses really need it. Okay, the masses really need it. All right, guys, try to not to do long videos anymore, but here we go, 20 minutes, right? All right, wish you guys the best. Catch you later.